Okay, I want you to really picture this. It is the dead of night. You know how it gets in a Texas summer, right? That heavy, incredibly humid air that just kind of clings to your skin. You're parked by the dark, murky waters of a totally secluded lake, and the tall trees around you are rustling ominously in the warm wind. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, a massive shadow drops from the branches above. It lands on the hood of your car with a terrifying metal grunching crash. A guttural, bone-chilling cry echoes through the quiet woods, and this massive clawed hand reaches right for your window. Pretty terrifying, right? Well, today on The Explainer, we are exploring one of the most fascinating, genuinely scary, and bizarre chapters in American cryptid history. We're talking about the Lake Worth monster. We are going to dive deep into that initial, very real terror. We'll examine the actual footprint and photographic evidence, and ultimately, we are going to completely dissect and gut this legend. To really understand the sheer panic of this event, we absolutely have to set the scene. The year is 1969. Now, this was a summer completely defined by extraordinary, world-changing events. You had the psychedelic sights and sounds of Woodstock, you had the grim daily reality of a bloody war in Vietnam, and of course, the monumental Apollo 11 moon landing. But if you lived in Fort Worth, Texas during that summer, your eyes weren't glued to the stars or the news from overseas. Not at all. Your eyes were nervously locked on the dense, pitch-black woods surrounding Greer Island at Lake Worth. A truly terrifying rumor was spreading like wildfire through the entire community. The rumor that something totally inhuman was stalking the shoreline. But what exactly was it? I mean, was it a genuine, undiscovered beast lurking out there in the dark? Was it just some mass hallucination born from that sweltering summer heat? Or was it something else entirely? Section 1. The Summer of '69. Let's look at how the madness actually took root. So, to grasp the sheer scale of the terror here, we really have to look at the timeline. This wasn't just a single, easily dismissed sighting that people could just write off as a trick of the light. No, it was a concentrated, undeniable wave of monster hysteria. It kicked off just past midnight on July 10th with a highly violent physical attack on a parked car. Then, the very next day, on July 11th, the creature seemingly escalated its aggression by hurling a tire at a massive crowd of onlookers. Fast forward to October, and actual photographic evidence enters the fray, which then culminated in a bizarre and truly terrifying assault on a sleeping camper on November 7th. It's a lot to take in, so let's break down exactly what happened on that very first night. The nightmare officially began on July 10th, 1969. John Reichart, his wife, and two other couples were parked near Greer Island, just simply taking in the nighttime view. Suddenly, without any warning whatsoever, something massive and heavy leapt from the branches of a nearby tree directly onto their vehicle. The creature reportedly tried to grab Reichart's wife before he desperately slammed on the gas, tires just spinning in the dirt, and sped the heck away. The terrified couples immediately rushed straight to the Fort Worth police, and their description of the attacker? Absolute nightmare fuel. They described it as part man, part goat, and covered in a sickening, completely unnatural mix of fur and scales. Other reports from that long summer fleshed out the horror even more. Witnesses described it as being whitish gray, walking fully upright, standing roughly 7 feet tall, and weighing an estimated 300 pounds. But here is what's really terrifying about all this. The police didn't just laugh this off and send the kids home. I mean, they initially suspected a prank, sure, but four heavily armed police units responded to the scene. Why? Because the witnesses were, in the exact words of Patrolman James S. McGee, genuinely and profoundly terrified. And even more importantly, they had actual physical proof. Investigators found a massive 18-inch scratch gouged deeply right down the metal side of John Reichart's car. The couples insisted, without a doubt, that it was the physical mark of the monster's grasping claw as it tried to reach inside the vehicle. So, suddenly, this wasn't just a spooky ghost story anymore. Whatever was out there in the Texas heat was solid, it was incredibly strong, and it was violently interacting with the locals. Section 2. Assault at Greer Island. Because if you thought the car attack was terrifying, the monster was just getting started.
This brings us to the dead of night on November 7th, 1969. Now I want you to imagine this. A man named Charles Buchanan is sleeping peacefully inside his sleeping bag, right in the open bed of his pickup truck near the lake. Suddenly, at 2 a.m., he is violently jerked to the hard ground, sleeping bag and all. Standing, towering above him in the absolute darkness is a hairy beast that Buchanan later described as a horrific cross between a human being and a gorilla. The creature's stench was so unbelievably overpowering that Buchanan was literally gagging. So in a moment of pure, panicked survival instinct, Buchanan blindly grabbed literally the only weapon he had within reach, A bag of leftover chicken. He just shoved the sack directly into the monster's face. The long-armed beast grabbed the chicken in its jaws, let out a terrifying series of guttural sounds, and loped off, splashing heavily into the water and swimming with these powerful strokes toward Greer Island. I know, it sounds exactly like a scene from a cheesy B-movie, but let me tell you, to Buchanan, the terror was absolutely real.
Okay, let's dive into this. People were just desperate for answers at this point. Locals began scouring the mud flats and shores of the Trinity River corridor for physical tracks. They were pouring plaster to capture these large, unnatural footprints. Some residents, who referred to it locally as the mud monster, actually claimed they had been chasing this thing for years. One amateur investigation even claimed to have found blood splatters and massive tracks leading right down to the water's edge, wildly speculating that the creature had actually been wounded in some kind of skirmish. The entire community was on maximum high alert. They were looking down nervously at the mud just as much as they were looking up into the dark trees. Section 3, Monster Mania takes over. Because a monster is really only as powerful as the fear it generates. And the local media? Well, they were about to pour high-octane gasoline directly onto the fire. The sheer panic wasn't just contained to a few isolated witnesses anymore. It infected the entire city. On the afternoon of July 10th, literally mere hours after the Reichardt car attack, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram ran this absolutely incredible, sensational front-page headline, "Fishy Man-Goat Terrifies Couples Parked at Lake Worth." Reporter Jim Mars broke the story, and the effect was instantaneous. By midnight that very same evening, the shores of Lake Worth were no longer isolated or quiet. That sensational headline had completely transformed a peaceful nature refuge into ground zero for a totally chaotic monster hunt. Carloads of curious, heavily armed citizens just descended on Greer Island. We are talking about literal mobs of 30 to 40 people at a time. And some of these folks were running around half-cocked with shotguns and rifles in the pitch black. Police Sergeant A.J. Hudson openly admitted he wasn't nearly as worried about the monster as he was about the massive armed mob looking for it. He was genuinely terrified someone was going to get accidentally shot in the crossfire. And it was right in front of this massive armed crowd on July 11th that the monster made its most dramatic appearance. Witnesses claimed the creature appeared high up on a 30-foot bluff, became highly agitated, let out a pitiful cry, and then hurled an automobile spare tire an impossible 500 feet into the crowd below. People, including actual sheriff's deputies, leaped into their patrol cars and fled in absolute terror. After that, the legend was permanently cemented. The frenzy eventually peaked when actual photographic evidence finally surfaced. In October of '69, a man named Alan Plaster was driving past the Nature Center and snapped a quick Polaroid picture of what appeared to be the monster. As you can see, the image showed a large, man-sized, white fur ball standing up in the brush. While it's incredibly blurry, it was exactly the definitive visual fuel the fire desperately needed. The photo was eventually handed over to a local Fort Worth resident named Sally Ann Clark. She became so engrossed in the mystery that she self-published a wildly popular book titled The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Island, and she packed it complete with eyewitness interviews and terrifying descriptions of the beast's booming roars. Section 4, Unmasking the Goatman. Now, it's time to do what we do best on The Explainer. We are going to strip away the fear, turn on the bright lights, and look at the cold, hard facts. It's time to completely dissect and gut this legend. So while the fear experienced by the locals was undeniably very real, the monster itself, well, let's look at the actual forensic evidence. Let's revisit the single most famous display of the monster's superhuman strength, that dramatic tire-throwing incident that sent literal police officers running for their lives. The media breathlessly reported a 300-pound beast hurling a heavy tire 500 feet through the air. But decades later, a local man known as Vinzens confessed to the hard truth. Vinzens and a couple of friends were wandering those bluffs looking for a party. Instead, they found a massive crowd of armed monster hunters parked directly below an old junkyard gravel pit. Seeing an irresistible opportunity, Vinzens and his friends jumped around waving their arms, grabbed a spare tire from the junkyard, and simply rolled it down the 30-foot incline. Yep, gravity did the rest of the work. The tire hit a bump, flew off the cliff edge, and landed near the cars. It wasn't thrown with superhuman strength, and it certainly didn't travel 500 feet in the air. The terrified crowd just completely panicked, and the newspapers happily exaggerated the rest. The rational explanations just kept pouring in as the years went by, piece by piece, totally destroying the myth. Tarrant County Sheriff Lon Evans actually suspected from the very beginning that it was just a bunch of pranksters in costumes. And, surprise, surprise, he was right. Reporter Jim Mars later noted that teenagers from nearby Brewer High School admitted to police that they had paraded around the dark lake in a gorilla suit. In 2005, an anonymous letter to the Star-Telegram revealed that 3 high school classmates actually used a tinfoil mask to scare couples that summer. I mean, a tinfoil mask. Other grounded theories to explain the varied, confusing sightings included things like an escaped macaque monkey, or even people simply misidentifying local wildlife like bobcats in the dark. The park naturalist even noted that the local bobcats were highly accustomed to sitting quietly in low tree branches, perfectly matching the initial car attack description.
Even the defining photographic evidence falls apart completely under any real scrutiny. Alan Plaster, the very man who took that famous blurry Polaroid of the white furball, he eventually completely distanced himself from the idea that he had photographed a real monster. Looking back with a critical eye, he stated he firmly believed it was just a prank. Why? Because of exactly how the creature behaved in the moment. In his own words, whatever it was, it wanted to be seen. It literally just stood there, deliberately posing in the brush for a passing car to see. And let's be real, elusive, undiscovered wild animals simply do not behave that way when a loud vehicle approaches with its headlights glaring.
Section 5. The enduring legend. So, the monster was completely unmasked, right?
It was a perfect, chaotic storm of teenage pranksters in cheap gorilla suits, a tire rolling down a hill, wildly exaggerated media reports, and pure mass hysteria. But here's the most fascinating part of the entire story. Despite being thoroughly debunked by confessions and basic physics, the Lake Worth monster absolutely refuses to die, and this brilliantly illustrates how the city of Fort Worth ultimately embraced their homegrown monster instead of just fading away in embarrassment. It became a permanent cultural touchstone. Sally Ann Clark's books sold thousands of copies to eager locals. By 1975, the Fort Worth Art Museum was proudly hosting a theatrical stage play about the creature produced by the Hip Pocket Theater. And today, ever since the 40th anniversary in 2009, the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge has hosted a wildly popular annual Lake Worth Monster Bash every single October. Complete with guided hikes and costume contests, the community celebrates the goatman not as a terrifying menace, but as a beloved local mascot. It successfully transformed from a source of genuine, heart-pounding terror to a source of civic pride and entertainment.
So, what should you take away from all this? The Lake Worth monster is an absolute masterclass in how an urban legend is born and sustained. It takes a little summer boredom, the deep isolation of a dark Texas lake, highly sensationalist newspaper headlines, a few teenagers with a cheap gorilla suit, and a community highly willing to suspend their disbelief. But it also reveals a deep, fundamental human desire. We want there to be mysteries left in the world. We actively want to believe that just beyond the safety of our headlights, something wild and unexplained is looking back at us. Even when we know for an absolute fact that the monster is just a kid rolling a spare tire down a gravel hill, the story survives. It survives because the thrill of the unknown is completely intoxicating. So the next time you find yourself parked by a dark, quiet lake and you're listening to a twig snap in the deep woods, ask yourself, are you really afraid of what's out there? Or are you secretly hoping to see a monster? Thanks for letting us be your guide on The Explainer today, and as always, keep questioning the shadows.